Hi guys, and welcome to Assessment 1, my quality teaching methods presentation. For this unit, I decided to do the Great War and specifically Australia's experience. And the lesson focus itself was on causes of World War One and reasons for enlistment. Now, today's presentation will be 6 slides in total, and it'll be 2 per dimension. Now, the dimensions we'll be covering today are intellectual quality, quality learning environments, and significance. So, moving on to the first slide. For dimension 1, which was intellectual quality, the idea here was building deep understanding through concept mapping. Now, I used the quality teaching method element of deep understanding to ensure students grasp how to, understand the causes of World War One, and how they were all interconnected. So I used this by doing a web, sort of explaining how everything was tangled in together. Now, during the lecture segment, I modeled a visual concept map showing militarism and how that led to an arms race, which then intensified alliances, feeding imperial ambitions and nationalist tensions. This process encourages relational rather than surface learning. For middle years students, explicit teaching is quite important, and it's supported by the visuals that were in this area, as you can see there with the example on the screen. Now, for developing more sophisticated conceptual understanding, I linked these all together just so they could see how they were properly connected. This approach allowed me to reflect specifically on Gore and Lugwood's notion of high quality teaching, as it deepens meaning rather than fragment knowledge, rather than just giving them specific facts, actually giving them visual representation. And this also aligns with adolescent cognitive growth. They're just starting to handle abstraction, but still need clear structural and visual representation. And I feel that I was able to represent this really well in this section. Now, moving on to my second part of Dimension 1, we discussed encouraging higher order thinking through source analysis. Now, to promote higher order thinking, I integrated source analysis using a World War One recruitment poster. So you can see I've got 4 here on the screen as my examples. Now, we use this through a see, think, wonder routine. So students were able to first observe each propaganda poster, and they could see and then infer some meaning towards it. And we proposed a few questions about this. So specifically with the ones here, we firstly discussed the sports attributes that were associated with the third and the fourth image you can see on the screen, explaining how they were wanting a fit man. And then in the second one there, you can see the sports man illustrated. For the first 2 on the slide, you can also see that was more in relation to Germany and the Kaiser. So the first one, you can see the hand drooping over Australia, and the second one was them already in Australia, and what that may have led to. This task required analysis, evaluation, and interpretation, moving beyond factual recall. Okay, so once again, moving away from that factual part of knowledge, we just want to actually expand on that and get them to think a bit deeper. It encouraged students to recognize bias and think critically about propaganda. This approach is particularly powerful for middle years students because it balances open-ended inquiry with clear, scaffolded information. It taps into their natural curiosity as well, and it helps them feel capable of engaging in real historical thinking. As Vygotsky's theory reminds us, scaffolding within the zone of proximal development helps learners extend their reasoning to new levels. Now, if we move on to Dimension 2, which was the quality learning environment, we first here aim to discuss the promotion of engagement through visual hook and guided discussion. So to foster engagement, firstly, I began the lesson with a powerful World War One recruitment poster. This visual served as a cognitive and emotional hook, It immediately sparked curiosity and invited students to speculate about the values and fears of 1914 Australia. This was also led on from the initial video I played as we entered the class. That was designed to spark emotion and see, I guess, a positive connotation of what was pre-war motivations through music, how they were promoting the war, sort of an adventure side of things. So it was initially designed to just give students that idea of what the emotions may have been feeling like in that initial pre-war period. Now we used the like a see, think, wonder model routine here as well. Basically, this was to guide discussion and ensuring every student had structured ways to participate within this. As you can see here, we've got some responses down below. Specifically, like patriotism's the top one there, and the possibility of being shamed as well, which was the second response, which was great. This created a sense of agency and inclusion right from the start, so students were able to respond and get straight into the lesson itself. Middle year students respond particularly well to stimulus-based learning because it combines imagery, emotion, and critical thinking, all of which sustain their intention, which is so important from the get-go of the lesson. This also set the tone for the classroom culture of inquiry, where curiosity drives learning rather than passive listening. Okay, so it got them involved straight away and got them a bit of experience as well to use in the future task we're about to follow. Now, for the second part of Dimension 2, we aimed to build social support through reflective writing and feedback. So the social support element is reflected in the diary entry activity. This was a consolidation phase where students wrote from the perspective of a young Australian in 1914. So we can see that here in the top section of the diary entry where we had a response, the Dear Diary entry, which is there. Writing in character requires emotional vulnerability and risk-taking. So I made sure to provide consistent encouragement and verbal feedback while they worked. I used what we call a glow and grow feedback kind of model. So basically you can see here my response to Jacob, acknowledging his contribution and congratulating him on what he had wrote. Basically, this is designed to highlight what they did well, and it can also lead to any improvement points. For Jacob here, he did exactly what we asked, got straight into things, and I thought he did a really good job of doing like an initial diary entry, which we will build on as the lessons continue. When students feel supported and valued, they're far more likely to persist with creative and reflective work. This practice also aligns with the QTM principle that meaningful learning depends on trusting and affirming environments. So reflecting here and being able to contribute a response to Jacob hopefully gives him motivation to continue on doing these tasks at the level he just contributed. Now, for our last dimension, which is significance, we firstly aim to build upon building connectedness through empathetic writing. And specifically, what I love to talk about is personalization, because it's such an important part of history itself, and specifically military history, because we can feel connected to the individuals we're learning about. Now, connectedness was built through the empathetic diary writing task. Students were encouraged to think deeply about what motivated young Australians to enlist and express that through first-person reflection. This helped them link historical content to universal human themes, such as courage, duty, belonging, and identity. Now, for middle year students who are developing a strong sense of self-morality, these parallels make history come alive. So that's, once again, getting back to that personalization side of things, really making them feel like they know the person they're reading, or I guess in the diary entry case, pretending to be. Okay, you want them to feel like they actually are that person. The task promotes historical empathy while reinforcing civic and personal understanding. It also reflects on the QTM's idea that significant learning connects school knowledge to broader social and personal contexts, giving learning real world resonance. Okay, so once again, for the last time I'll mention it, linking into personalization, really making them feel attached to the task itself. And for our last point on dimension three, we were looking at extending relevance through connections and reflection. So to finish this, I used a brief reflection question to extend relevance, asking students to consider what lessons from World War One, well, basically how we've learnt today, and what was the important parts to the causations of World War One, and reasons for enlistment. This task encouraged students to think back historically on what they've learnt today. Did it challenge anything they had previously thought? Did they learn something new? Hopefully they did. And it shapes how we understand where we're going into the next lessons. So we also talked about what was progressing into the next lesson, which was going to be more of like a trench warfare situation on how the Australians actually contributed to the war once they actually got there. So how our narratives might start to change a bit. So that was the basis for the ending of the lesson. And I think the engagement and retention in this area through the QTMs of significance, emphasis around the informed, ethical citizens we're trying to create with our students. I think it worked really well. And I hope they're really, really excited for lesson two, which will be kicking off this week. Thank you.